Boy, we got a good one for you guys today. I don't know most of you guys, but I love crime drama. And in crime drama, there's one rule of thumb in all crime dramas. Everyone end up being in for themselves. Before we get into this, you know what we like. We want you to subscribe. We want you to like, and we want you to give us all the hype. So let's get into it. Okay, guys. So I don't know much of you guys. I don't know how much of the news you've been listening to, but if you've been following football news right now, this whole FIFA scandal and this FIFA trying to sell off FIFA has all been in the news, right? But I think for most of us that are just regular fans, sometimes we don't really understand what these people are talking about, right? There's a lot of hype in the news. People are talking about, if you go look at any UK tabloid right now, they're talking about how FIFA is trying to sell off the game and all that. But I wanted to kind of make sense of all of this. So let's talk about it. So when I was doing a little digging, I wanted to figure out exactly what is going on with this whole FIFA thing. Let's try to understand this. Let's try to decipher this. So before we get into that, though, let's talk about who the main players are, right? As usual, we got to talk about the players. We got to paint a picture for all of us to understand what's really going on. So now, their players are these, right? We got Infantino, the current president of FIFA. He's the boss. He's the guy running the show right there at FIFA, right? He came in 2016. If most of you guys remember, that was when Sepp Blatter got pushed out, a lot of corruption. I think somebody might even make it rain on Sepp Blatter during one of the conferences, just completely disrespectful, right? But nonetheless, maybe deserved, right? But Sepp Blatter was pushed out. Infantino came in. Let's be clear what he ran on. So that way, because this is important for this whole story, right, to make sense. Let's be clear on what Infantino ran on. He ran on the fact that he wanted to promote football globally. He wanted to increase the commercial aspect of football across the world. He wanted to push globalization of football even in areas that haven't been commercially viable, like, think of the US and some of the other areas that we feel like maybe the money's not really behind football like that. That's what Infantino came in running on. So let's be clear on what his agenda was from the beginning, because I don't want to make it seem like Infantino is this or that. I want to kind of paint a picture that's a level playing field for most of us to really follow it and understand what's going on. Okay. So he came in on that in 2016. And to be honest, I got to be honest, it's the football, the revenue that, FIFA has generated in the time that Infantino's came in, it's crazy, right? Like, he really did generate the revenue. I think something like this cycle, they're projected to make like $15 billion or something like that in this cycle. And if you don't know what it is, FIFA typically they have cycle, right? This is, I believe, is 2023 through 2026 cycle right now, right? Is what they're running on. And that's how they fund a lot of the projects, I guess. But the way it works is that in this 2023 to 26 cycle, they're projected to make 15 billion, which is crazy, right? That's a lot of money compared to what maybe they even historically made. And it wasn't like FIFA was not making a lot of money to begin with, right? FIFA doesn't have any debt, right? Right now, they don't owe anybody a lot of money, so they just kind of have a lot of reserves, right? So cash in house. So they're very profitable organization. If you look at it from a business standpoint, very profitable, right? So this is kind of what he's ran on. He's been able to successfully kind of push this a little bit, at least from a financial aspect. Okay, so now we know a little bit about Infantino. But like we said, he's the president of FIFA, but doesn't mean he owns football around the world, right? It's not like an organization where this guy comes in and he's the one that calls the shot on everything. But to understand how the FIFA structure works, right? And this is why I said every man for themselves at the end of the day. So let's talk about the structure of FIFA. So FIFA is made up of 211 members, right? To keep it simple. They're made up of those members, right? These members are essentially, you can think about it like the federation, the soccer federation in the US, the FAs around the world. So the Nigerian FA, whatever football, all of those football organization across each one of these countries that participate all make up these bodies. So there's 211 of them, right? So you can think of it as one member, one vote, right? So as a member, you get one vote, right? So it represents. So that was as representation across the globe, right? But as you can imagine, these organizations are in different regions, right? Like, so you can think of the UEFA, the European region, right? You think of the African region, you think of the Asia region, right? So there's these regions that make up, as you can imagine, not all fingers are equal, right? So in the case of UEFA, I believe they have 50 something members, right? In the case of CONCACAF, which represents some of the groups here, like, so the Caribbeans and North Americans, some of those, like, it's made up of, I think, 40 something members. Don't quote me on that. But the point is, most of these guys make up these bodies that are members of FIFA, right? So naturally, if they are voting members of FIFA, Infantino cannot just make any decision that he wants to make because he's making them. He essentially has to respect the members and their votes. So that counts. That's why they have that. So outside, you would think this makes total sense, right? Like, okay, you have a leader. That person is responsible for running the business, but you can't just run amok of the business. So you essentially have to kind of consult the members before you can make a decision. Okay. Now, we just talked about 211 members, right? There's also these other subunits of the members that are called council members. So you can think of these guys as the guys that actually make the decision. So when there's the decision to be made for FIFA, they make this decision with Infantino. Okay. So think of these, I want to say that 37 members, right? So naturally, Infantino is one of them, right? And there are 8 out of those 37 council members. There are 8 of them that are vice presidents. So these are vice presidents to Infantino. So there's 8 vice presidents for Infantino as the president. Okay. And the rest are council members, right? I want to start painting a picture. So as we go down this road, you can kind of understand where I'm going with this, right? So that's eight of them, right? Out of these 8, guess how many, just out of curiosity, is from Europe? At least out of the vice presidents, there's at least 3 of them. This is going to come in handy here soon. So we keep moving forward. So that's kind of the structure of FIFA, okay? You now know what Infantino came in running on. You now know the 211 members and the council members. So you kind of understand at a high level how this whole thing works, right? As far as the structure. Now, what did Infantino do? What's the uproar about? Let's talk about that. So Infantino, his idea was simple. Like I said, he came in running on globalizing football from a financial standpoint. He wants to make sure that areas that weren't commercially viable in the past are now commercially viable. So he's going to put a lot of effort into those. It's kind of the idea. That's what he's been pushing. Obviously, we see it in the money, $15.5 billion in this cycle. That's huge. Definitely an increase in their revenue from the past cycle. Now, he's coming in. Here's what he's saying. He's saying, I'm going to create a separate company called FIFA Forward Enterprise. Okay? FFE, I believe. I'm going to create this company. It's going to have the commercial aspect of FIFA. We're going to push that out into this new company. Okay? We have FIFA and its governing bodies that make the rule. The council make the rule 100%. No outside body interferes with their rule. It's just those council members that make most of the decision, including the votes from their members, the 211 members, right? So now what Infantino is proposing is we're going to take the TV, the broadcasting rights. We're going to take all the money-making areas of FIFA. We're going to take all of those out, and we're going to put it into this business called FFE. And this business, we will allow private investors to buy a piece of that business, right? So he's not saying we're going to take all of FIFA and give it to this private investor. He's saying we're going to take a chunk, the part that is the money-making aspect of things, put it into this new business, and we're going to make that available for private investors to be able to put money into it. Okay. Now, as part of this, he also suggested that these private investors will not have voting right and will not have any governing right, meaning the existing members, the 211 members and the council member, all of those people will still hold 100% of their voting right, not diluted. None of these private investors will be able to have that type of say in FIFA. Therefore, keeping the integrity as far as governance of FIFA intact. So if you think of it that way, most of us, when we hear that, we say, okay, he's not trying to dilute the rules, right? He just wants to carve out the part that makes a lot of money. They're already making money right now. Make more money, right? So that makes sense from a business standpoint. It makes sense. So if you're thinking of it that way, you're thinking, well, there's more money coming in. We're going to sell a piece of that business, right? Like, so how much of that business is he trying to sell? That business he carved out, how much of that is he trying to sell? He wants to sell 20% of that. Okay, 20% of that business to private investors. And they're going to put about $4 billion into the business, this new business. They're going to pump that into it. Now, as part of this, JP Morgan Chase, for most of you guys that know, that are maybe a little into banking, you kind of understand who you've used Chase before at some point. JP Morgan Chase was the one that did the valuation of this new FFE business. Okay, so they did the valuation. They valuated the business at about $20 billion. Okay, so you're hearing all of that, a lot of money flying, $20 billion. We're going to pump $4 billion right now into the business because we're investing into the business. And so you're hearing all this money movement. You're thinking, okay, well, the FIFA is already making money now. They're going straight to the moon now. They're making a lot of money now. So you're thinking that as an outsider looking in. So what is in it? What is in it for the members? So I get that. That's what Infantino is proposing. That's what the investors are putting in. That's what JP Morgan Chase valuated the business at. So then what do the members get for this? So to understand what the members get, let's first understand what the members are getting right now, currently. What are the members getting currently? Okay. The members currently are getting, under the current FIFA rules, right? In this cycle, each one of the members are getting $8 million roughly. So if you think of that, you're thinking, and to be clear, the $8 million is for the 4-year cycle. So 2023 to 2026, they're getting $8 million, right? So if you think of that, $8 million for each one of these. So that means you can use that to build facilities in your own environments, in your countries. You can use it to fund football programs, your own federation. You can fund it with that $8 million. So that's the current thing that they get as a member. Okay. FIFA is proposing, as part of this new FFE deal, they are going to increase that existing $8 million to $20 million in the next cycle. So that means when this cycle is about to end in 2026, when the next cycle starts, they are going to increase that from 8 million for that cycle to 20 million. So you get $12 million extra for their cycle. So you think about that, you double, more than double the amount that you normally get. So as far as anyone is concerned, that is a no-brainer. It makes sense. Okay. What else do they get? So in addition, they also get an additional one-time $20 million investment in that cycle as well. So they go from $8 million for the 4-year cycle to potential $40 million in that 4-year cycle, $32 million more than they normally get. So you think about that. Wow. FIFA is already making money. These investors are now putting money into the business. This side business, these investors are also not having governing rights over FIFA and what FIFA is about. So that means they can't vote. The members are still intact in their voting structure. None of that is diluted. So you're thinking of that and thinking, then what could be wrong with this proposal? This is what Infantino proposed, right? Not to say anything or point fingers here, just saying this is what Infantino proposed, at least according to what's been reported in Times and some of the other news report. That's what he proposed. Okay, so what's the issue? So now to understand the issue, I think we first need to understand who was for it and who was against it. So who are for it? The ones that are for it, Indonesia, publicly it's been documented that they're for it. So we'll come back to that. Comoros also came out and said they're for this. Okay. Their FA came out and said they're for this. Okay. Makes sense to me. I can understand why those two, at least publicly, have been out saying they're for it. Now, there's some other ones that are threading the line, didn't really say if they're for or not, but I'm just saying Comoros and Indonesia publicly have said they are for it. So as a result, we got to take them for their word, right? Now, I'm not even mad at them, to be honest with you. You went from 8 million to 40 million in your small country and you can use the money and the facilities. You're not really thinking twice because what's in it for you right now anyway? You're already down. So I can understand that. But the people that also publicly said they are not for it, and that's where we hear most of the news when we hear it on the news. Obviously, UEFA strongly oppose it, right? We also have the Asia conference that also are saying they're not for it, right? We also have CONCACAF, which is the Caribbeans and some of the Americas also saying they're not for it, right? So we have now three bodies that are not for UEFA, the Asia Federation, and then we have CONCACAF that also said they're not for it. Okay. But then we now have to ask ourselves, why are all these ones against it? Because think about it. Why are they against this, right? To be honest with you, UEFA, when I said earlier that every man for themselves, it makes sense why they would be against it. Why wouldn't they be against it, right? By doing this, FIFA automatically is a bigger organization, right? They now have way more money than you can think of with private investors in the business. Okay? Maybe they don't have voting rights right now and governing rights, but all you got to do is chip away at it, right? All you got to do is chip away little by little before it becomes a thing, right? Secondly, there are rumors saying Infantino might have something in FFE that allowed him to continue to be in football even after his presidency term, right? We don't know this, but this is some of the rumors. I don't know this, but I'm just saying these are some of the rumors. Maybe that's got something to do with it. We don't know, right? But there's also another aspect of this. UEFA is so big already. Like, think about it. If Europe, like they said, they were going to pull all their people out of any FIFA event if this goes through. If UEFA pull all the big, you're thinking Spain, France, England, just too many of them, right? Like, there are just European countries that are really, really carrying the FIFA tournament, right? Not to talk about the Women's World Cup, right? You know what's interesting, actually, all of this, as I think about it, to be honest with you. Out of all of this, how come we don't hear more about the women's side, the impact on the women's side? We only hear about all the men's side of things. That's kind of strange. But anyway, I digress. So let's go back to this. Now, I can understand in Europe why they wouldn't want this. They're already big. It's going to cut into their money because now FIFA, part of the deal and the part I didn't touch on was the fact that the part of the proposal is also to expand the FIFA a number of teams that can play in it. So that means it's now cutting into the revenue. They now have more teams playing in their tournament. The schedule now gets longer. It affects all the European games, right? There's now more competition, right? Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with this, right? Like, for them. So it's not just about the money, because already as it is, if you think about it, EPL's probably got the biggest commercial as far as TV rights and most watched games and things like that. So clearly they're already winning, right? Like, on that side. So it would make no sense for them to agree to this deal. And I don't even think it's just the money aspect, because in all honesty, I'm sure UEFA could use 40 more million. I'm sorry, the European countries could use 40 more million every cycle to do whatever they want to do, right? Like, but I don't even think it's about the money here, guys. And I want to give you that play. I don't think it's even about the money. I think what it's about power struggle. At the end of the day, every man for themselves. I'm sorry. UEFA is still in it for themselves. Even though we're talking about all these smaller federations can use the money, all these smaller countries can use the money. Do you think UEFA care about that? UEFA care about European teams. They don't care about African teams. They don't care about the Caribbean. Every man for themselves. You know, the one that is interesting to me, though, is CONCACAF. But like, when you think about CONCACAF going against this, there are a lot of Caribbean countries, like all these island countries. Like, those people can probably use the money, but they went against it. That's strange to me. Right? So that tells you this every man is in it for themselves for one reason or the other. It's not that Infantino's idea is so terrible. It's not like they're not already making money. It's the fact that Infantino had a year-long run at putting this whole plan together. I think that's the other aspect that I want to put you guys on. According to the reports, they said Infantino started this whole journey in 2025. And like I described to you at the beginning of the show, we talked about the fact that there are UEFA folks on that list of vice president for Infantino. So that means Infantino went a whole year putting this whole plan together and they weren't consulted. It was all his idea trying to put the whole thing together because like we said at the beginning of the show, Infantino's plan was part of this, was to grow this. He tried this once before. Let's not forget that. Infantino, I believe, I want to, don't quote me on it, but I believe in 2018, tried the same move to try to do something like carve out, commercial aspect of FIFA to try to monetize, at least to private investors. Wasn't successful. This is the second shot at this, not successful, right? So again, I'm saying, the way where I'm sitting and looking in, I'm thinking the idea is just because he didn't consult them, right? He didn't go to them and maybe, for lack of better words, using the game on kiss the ring. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got to kiss the ring before all of this happens, right? It's not just about the money, but there's also a threat here. So I think a lot of the European Federation are probably looking at FIFA doing this as a threat, major threat to their voting rights in FIFA, but also threat to their own bottom line, right? They're not worrying about the African teams or the island, right? And this brings me to my last point, and we're going to wrap up the show, which is for all these smaller countries, it always gets me that they talk about how much money they need, but you never see the development, right? I can't speak for every other country, but there's certainly countries I can speak for. I can speak for Nigeria. I can speak for, in the case of the U.S., not even maybe that they need the money. In the case of U.S., the whole pay to play is already there. So whether they get more money or not, that's not going to help the game. The structure, the foundation. When in the case of some of these countries, corruption is the foundation. You can't grow the FA like that. Even if you give them 40 million, it's still not going to do anything. They're just going to steal the money. And in the case of the U.S. and some of these other structure where they have pay to play, I still don't think that's going to change anything. You can get more money, but as long as the structure is still kids need to pay to play, I'm not sure this whole thing works. So I'm just giving y'all a little bit of game there. So we wrap up the show like that. But just before you wrap up the show, like I said, make sure you subscribe to our show. Make sure you like it. And if you want us to talk about a specific topic, obviously you can drop it in the comments. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next time.